Hi, I'm Maura. 5 years ago, my sister walked out on our family. No goodbyes, just vanished. I stayed behind. I held everything together, paid bills, nursed our parents through sickness, kept the lights on, literally. And then she came back with another man's child, and they kicked me out. They called it making space. But what they really made was a story where I never existed. Why did the ones I sacrificed everything for erase me from my own life? And what would you do if your silence only made them bolder? By the time I pulled into the driveway that evening, the sky had already dipped into shades of amber and ash. I remember thinking it was too quiet for a Thursday. No TV echo from inside, no creak of the porch swing. But what really made me pause was the unfamiliar SUV parked up front. It had a car seat in the back and tinted windows. I hadn't gotten any text. No, "Hey, someone's coming by," from Mom. Nothing. The front door was unlocked. As soon as I pushed it open, laughter spilled out. Warm, overlapping voices that didn't include mine. I stepped inside and froze. My parents were in the living room, glowing like the 4th of July. Mom's eyes were glassy, her hands shaking as she clutched the shoulder of a woman I hadn't seen in 5 years. Callista, my older sister. Standing next to her was a little boy, maybe 4, with curly hair and a Spider-Man hoodie. She had one hand on his head, the other holding Dad's arm. I hadn't heard him laugh like that since before she left. They didn't notice me, or maybe they did, but nobody stopped. Nobody turned. Callista knelt beside the boy and whispered, "Say hi to Grandma and Grandpa, baby." He looked up, uncertain, then waved a tiny hand. Mom's voice wobbled. "He's perfect, just perfect." I cleared my throat. Only then did Mom glance at me. "Maura, give them a moment, okay? They've been through enough." Her tone made me feel like a stranger interrupting a funeral. I stood there, the outsider with her keys still in hand and her shoes still on, not knowing whether to go deeper into the house or walk back out. I chose neither. I just stood, invisible. Hours passed. Or maybe it was 10 minutes. I can't tell. Eventually, I wandered down the hallway to my room. Except it wasn't my room anymore. The door was cracked open. Inside, the familiar pale lavender walls had been repainted a soft gray. My posters, photos, and bookshelf were gone. In their place, a toddler bed with dinosaur sheets, a diaper-changing table, a lullaby-playing mobile still spinning above. My boxes, my life, were stacked in plastic tubs next to the closet. I stood there, numb. Mom's voice came from behind me. "You're barely home these days." It made sense. We needed somewhere for him. Not a question, not a request, a declaration, as if logic could wash away entitlement. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Later, while they laughed over leftover lasagna and Gideon knocked over his milk, I sat alone on the porch steps. The stars had come out. The air had cooled. My plate was nowhere on the table. I wasn't even asked if I'd eaten. At some point, I slipped back inside to use the bathroom and saw the dining room scene from a distance. Mom feeding Gideon a spoonful of peas, Dad grinning at whatever story Callista was telling. The table set for 4. My seat was gone, like it had never been mine. No one noticed me standing there. I didn't announce anything. I didn't throw a fit. I just grabbed my coat and keys and stepped back outside. The air hit different now, clean, cutting. I stood at the edge of the porch and watched the house through the window, the place that raised me, that I came back to care for when no one else did, the place I paid the utilities for last winter, the place where I cooked and cleaned and ran errands while they recovered from surgeries and colds and quiet bouts of depression. But tonight, it wasn't my home. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was untethered. I stood outside in the cold, watching the warmth I once belonged to slip further behind that front door. That night, I slept on the living room couch. Well, slept might be generous. I laid there staring at the ceiling, listening to muffled laughter coming from the hallway. No one came to ask if I was okay. No one offered me a pillow. Around midnight, Mom, Vera, walked through and placed a folded blanket near my feet. No words, just the gentle rustle of fabric, and then her back disappearing down the hall. By morning, the house was abuzz with activity. I kept my head down, made myself coffee, and tried not to exist too loudly. I caught a conversation between Callista and Mom as I passed the kitchen. "It's just something small," Callista was saying. "A little welcome back brunch, that's all," Mom responded brightly. "Perfect, you deserve it." I paused just long enough to glance at the family calendar pinned to the fridge. Sharpie letters read, "Family brunch, RSVP by Friday." Underneath, a neat list of names. Mine wasn't on it. I didn't say a word. I poured my coffee, took it to the porch, and sat in the silence like a stranger squatting on borrowed land. The brunch was that Saturday. I remember checking the mirror before I left my room. The bathroom mirror, since mine had been taken down to make room for some lion-shaped nightlight. I wore a soft green blouse and jeans. Nothing flashy. I wasn't going to let them dress me down without dressing up at least a little. I arrived 5 minutes early, and the house already buzzed with voices. The living room was filled with familiar faces. Neighbors, friends of the family, a few distant relatives I hadn't seen since college. There were party streamers, fresh flowers on the counter, and a punch bowl Mom probably borrowed from the church. The entire kitchen smelled like baked quiche and lemon bars. A woman I barely recognized leaned in and whispered, "You must be the nanny." I blinked. She was already smiling at someone else. Next came a man from down the street. "Didn't know there was another daughter. Huh." My throat tightened, but I smiled politely. Of course he didn't know. Of course he wouldn't. I made my way to the dining table and picked up one of the printed programs. It had a photo of Callista and Gideon on the front. Inside, welcome message, food list, speaker notes, mentions of supportive family and resilient mothers. My name was nowhere. Not a single line, not even a mention of me in the thank you section. And then, like she was waiting for her cue, Mom walked by with a guest and said loudly, "Oh, that's just Maura. She's been helping out since Callie came home. A blessing, really." Helping out. Not daughter, not family, not even sister. Just helping. I stayed for another 20 minutes, sipping from a plastic cup of fruit punch, nodding to people who nodded back out of habit, not recognition. Callista didn't speak to me once. Neither did Dad. By the time I made it back to the porch, my face felt hot, but not from the sun. I walked down the steps, past the cars, and into my own. I sat there with the door open for air, trying not to cry. I wasn't going to give them that, not in this driveway. The text came that evening. "You didn't need to cause a scene." It was from Mom. Scene? I hadn't said a word, not one. I stared at the screen, realizing they weren't just rewriting the present, they were erasing my past. The weekend moved slowly, like molasses down a cold glass. The house was quieter now, but not in a peaceful way. It was that uneasy hush that settles when something's been broken, but nobody's willing to look at the pieces. We all moved through the space like actors in a play, careful not to overlap lines or make eye contact. No one asked where I'd gone after the brunch. No one mentioned my absence when the dishes were done and the chairs put away. Dad busied himself fixing a drawer that didn't need fixing. Vera spent most of Sunday in the kitchen, humming songs she never used to like. Callista and Gideon stayed in his room, occasionally emerging like royalty, stepping out onto a balcony. I kept quiet. I swept floors that weren't dirty. I folded towels that weren't mine. And still, I wasn't seen. Monday afternoon, I was dusting the hallway shelves when I noticed the old family photo frame had been moved. It used to sit center left, above the thermostat, one of those framed canvas wraps from our Yellowstone trip in 2015. I hadn't looked at it in a while. Now it leaned awkwardly against a vase of fake lilies. I lifted it gently, brushing the dust from the edge, and stared. It was the same shot. Dad's arm around Mom, Callista grinning wide, and Gideon's tiny frame photoshopped in next to her. But where I should have been, far right, standing in my forest green hoodie, was nothing. Cropped out, clean as a scalpel slice. My stomach knotted. I rushed to the shared family drive on Dad's old desktop. I remembered uploading all those photos years ago, organizing folders by date. Yellowstone, July 2015. Birthday dinners, Thanksgiving 17, Christmas mornings. Half of them were gone. The rest had been reorganized, Mom's words. But it wasn't reorganization, it was revision. I walked into the kitchen, photo frame still in hand. Vera glanced up from the sink. Something wrong? You cut me out of this, I said. My voice didn't shake. It came out like paper tearing. She dried her hands slowly. The original got damaged. We had to crop it down. It was blurry anyway. I stared at her, silent. Then Callista walked in, sipping from a glass of iced tea, all cozy and composed. We didn't think you'd mind. It's not like you were home much that year. I could have screamed. Instead, I placed the frame gently on the counter and left the room. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of Gideon's toddler bed. My old twin mattress was gone. So were the posters, the bookshelf, the framed certificate I earned for academic excellence senior year, once proudly nailed to the door. It was just a nursery now. Neat, impersonal, necessary. They'd erased me from the walls the same way they'd edited the photo. Clean, quiet, and final. I thought about piano recitals where Dad forgot to bring flowers, about the honor roll notes Vera used to pin to the fridge. My name had once filled this house. Now it was just a ghost people stepped around. I looked around the room, breathing in the powdery scent of baby lotion and lemon-scented wipes. The overhead nightlight blinked softly. Somewhere between that blink and the next, something shifted in me. A silence hardened into resolve. They weren't just trying to make room for Callista. They were rewriting the whole story, and I was being edited out one detail at a time. Later that night, while passing the living room, I noticed the family photo had been rehung. It now had a brass plate beneath it, engraved in clean cursive, "Our complete family." The envelope looked like junk mail, cream-colored, a little too official for a coupon flyer, but not urgent enough for anyone to care. It had Vera's name on it, not mine, but it was sitting in the pile of mail near the stairs, where we all toss letters like we're playing cards with no one to beat. I was sorting bills when I opened it without thinking. More muscle memory than mischief. It was a notice from a local attorney's office, friendly in tone, sterile in content. Confirmation of amended trust agreement. I read it twice. A revision to the family trust. Curious turned to cold. My name wasn't anywhere on the document. That night, after they'd gone to bed and the house had gone quiet except for the low hum of the fridge, I opened the old filing cabinet in the den. The lock hadn't worked right in years. Dad always said he'd fix it. Never did. I pulled out a folder labeled Estate Current, and inside was a notarized document dated just a few weeks ago. The beneficiaries now listed Callista May Harper and dependent Gideon Harper. That was it. No mention of Maura Lynn Harper, not even as a contingent. The ceiling could have cracked open and swallowed me whole, and I would have felt less dizzy. I sat on the floor with that paper in my lap, reading it over and over, trying to convince myself I was misreading something. But the ink didn't change. The names didn't rearrange themselves. They'd written me out. Legally. Willingly. Over eggs and toast the next morning, I laid the document flat on the table like it was Exhibit A. Vera blinked at it, reached for her coffee. Lyle barely looked up from the paper. I was shaking. Not from rage, but from the sheer weight of the betrayal. You changed the trust, I said, without even talking to me. Vera sighed, almost like she was disappointed in me. It's temporary. Callie needs a fresh start. She's been through a lot. She left, I said. You erased me from your will to give her a head start? What do you think I've been doing here for the last 5 years? Just killing time? Lyle folded his paper, still not meeting my eyes. It's not what you think. Callista stood quietly in the doorway, arms crossed, not a hint of surprise on her face. She needs more than you do, Vera said, soft but firm. You're independent. You're always going to be okay. But she's starting over. With a child. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because it was the only sound left in my throat. You're not giving her a head start. You're telling me I never mattered. No one answered, not even Callista. Just silence, thick and suffocating. I left my breakfast untouched and walked straight to my car. I didn't drive anywhere. I just sat in the front seat, gripping the steering wheel, letting memories sucker punch me one by one. I thought about the month Dad was recovering from hip surgery, how I drove him to every appointment, even missed work to stay home when Vera got sick. The hours I spent on hold with insurance companies. The late-night pharmacy runs. The early mornings I got up just to make sure the heater didn't quit on a December night. All of that, now overwritten, like a tape being recorded over with someone else's voice. I stayed in that car until the sun started to dip, then walked back into the house without saying a word. That evening, I wrote one sentence on a yellow notepad, tore it from the pad, and taped it to the fridge. Do not ask me for another favor until you fix what you've broken. No one acknowledged it, but I noticed Callista avoided the kitchen for the rest of the night. Later, as I headed down the hallway toward my room, the one that was now someone else's, I heard Vera say from the living room, her voice low but clear through the stillness, "Sometimes we have to protect those who need us more." I realized then, my worth to them had always depended on who needed them less. The notification came during my lunch break. I was sitting in my car outside the clinic, eating a turkey sandwich and trying to answer emails. My phone buzzed twice. One message from a coworker I barely knew. "Your sister's story is going viral." The other was a tag on a video. At first, I hesitated. I had been avoiding anything online lately. Too much of it led back to her, to them, to that house. But curiosity poked at me, persistent and unkind. So I tapped the link. The video opened with soft piano music, the kind you'd hear in a therapy commercial. The lighting was gentle, warm, almost angelic. Callista sat on the floor of the nursery, my former bedroom, with Gideon in her lap, nestled close to her side. Her voice cracked with emotion as she looked directly at the camera. "I just want to thank everyone who's shown us kindness," she said, blinking through carefully crafted tears. "And to the neighbor lady who stepped in and helped when we had nothing. I'll never forget you." Comments floated across the screen like confetti. "Single moms are warriors. She's doing everything on her own. Amazing. That nanny deserves a medal." My jaw clenched. I rewound the video. There, blurred in the background, folding laundry, was me. My shape, my hair, unmistakable to anyone who knew me, but not a single mention of who I actually was. My phone started lighting up again. "Wait, you're the nanny, right? Maura? Is this you helping Callista in the video? Why didn't you say anything sooner?" The view count climbed past 14,000, then 16,000. The number didn't even feel real. It was the audacity of it that landed the punch. When I got home that evening, the air inside the house felt heavy, like it knew what I'd just seen. I didn't bother putting down my bag. Callista was at the kitchen island, eating soup from one of the ceramic bowls I bought last year. She looked up, casual as ever. "You erased me in real life. Now online too?" I asked, not even bothering to mask the burn in my tone. She blinked slowly, like someone pretending to be surprised in a high school play. "I didn't say your name." "No, you called me a neighbor lady, like I'm some stranger who wandered in to help you find your humanity." She shrugged, setting her spoon down. "You said you didn't want to be involved in the brunch or the fundraiser. I figured this was my story to tell. I was protecting your privacy." Vera emerged from the hallway, just in time for the closing act. "Girls, let's not make this into something it's not," she said, the familiar diplomat tone back in full swing. "It was just a misunderstanding." I turned to her. "Is it a misunderstanding that I've cooked, cleaned, and paid for groceries while she's live streaming our life to strangers who think I'm the help?" No one answered. And I didn't wait for them to. That night I sat on my bed, what little was left of it, and deleted myself from every family shared account. The cloud drive, the grocery app, the group calendar. Then I logged onto my social media accounts. I didn't post a rant, no angry essay, just one line under her video, buried in the flood of praise. Truth always finds a way back. It took less than 10 minutes before my phone buzzed again. A text from Vera. "What did you just do, Maura?" That text wasn't fear, it was panic, and for once, it wasn't mine. The house was silent for 2 days. No texts, no glances. No Vera at my door with one of her half-hearted explanations. It wasn't peace, it was strategy. They were hoping silence would smooth it all over, bury it under the rug like so many things before. But this time, I didn't chase noise to fill the void. I let it echo. I needed the space to hear myself think. It was mid-afternoon when my phone lit up. The message preview showed his name, and I already knew before opening it. "Maura, I need some space. That video your sister posted has made things complicated. My mom saw it. She thought you were the nanny. She doesn't want drama tied to the family. I tried to explain, but maybe it's better if we take a step back. No call, just that. I didn't cry. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. There wasn't anything to say. Not really. I hadn't even told him the full story yet, and now I wouldn't get the chance. Callista's version had already taken root, watered by likes and hearts and comments from people who'd never met me. I put the phone down, walked to the mirror in the hallway, and studied my own face. I didn't look broken, just tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of fighting battles no one knew I was even in. That night I recorded a video on my phone. I didn't post it, I saved it. Titled it Proof, just in case. It wasn't for an audience. It was for me, for when I needed to remember what the truth looked like in my own eyes. Then I opened a notebook and started writing. Names, dates, what was said, what wasn't. Snapshots of manipulation dressed as family dynamics. The kind of evidence no one cared about until you needed it, until it became your only defense. By the next morning, I'd slipped into a new rhythm. I left early for work, picked up extra shifts, stayed late when I could. I timed my return carefully. Never early enough for dinner, never late enough to raise suspicion. I skipped the living room, moved through the house like a tenant with a month-to-month lease. They noticed. Of course they did. But no one said anything. I avoided the shared spaces. I used the laundry room during off hours. I kept food in a cooler in my closet. I wasn't just physically moving out. I was emotionally detaching, thread by fraying thread. It was a strange kind of freedom, watching them squirm in their own comfort zone. The tension had shifted. I wasn't raising my voice, but I was making noise. Late one evening, after Vera and Lyle had gone to bed, I sat on the floor of the hall and pulled out the same trust document I'd found weeks ago. I scanned it again. Nothing had changed. Still no mention of me. I took a photo of every page, encrypted the files, and emailed them to myself with the subject line, "In case I disappear." It was dramatic, sure, but I was done playing it safe. Before going to bed, I taped a note to my door. Just 8 words, bold and black and centered. Erase me again, and I'll respond in permanent ink. The next morning, the note was still there, untouched, but I could feel the shift. That afternoon, I came home early. I had a headache, and I couldn't stand the smell of disinfectant at the clinic anymore. I walked straight to my room, opened the door, and sat down at the desk. 10 minutes later, it happened. The sound of footsteps storming down the hall, then the door flung open so hard it bounced off the wall. Callista stood there, eyes blazing, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles were white. "Are you threatening us?" I didn't flinch. Not this time. I was finally learning how to be loud without shouting. The voicemail hit around 10 a.m., just as I was finishing charts in the back office. I recognized the number, Denver area code, but not the voice. "Hi, Maura, this is Liz from Clear Ridge Behavioral Clinic. I wanted to touch base regarding your application. We received a concerning reference call. Nothing's finalized, but we'll need to pause the interview process until we clear some things up. Thanks." Click. It took a full minute before I moved. I stared at the wall, blinking at the beige paint like it owed me an explanation. My stomach dropped, but not in fear, in recognition. This wasn't an accident. This was precise. By lunch, I was texting Anna, my old college friend who now worked HR at Clear Ridge. We'd had coffee once every 6 months, enough that she'd remember my name, my resume, and how hard I worked to claw my way back into clinical care. She called me within the hour. "Maura, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but you're not crazy. Someone called pretending to be a former supervisor, claimed you had emotional instability, that your last position ended with disciplinary issues." My pulse pounded in my ears. Anna went on. "It was way too polished, scripted, no details, just broad language designed to raise red flags. I smelled something off, so I started digging." She'd traced the number. It wasn't corporate. It matched a prepaid line, Denver area. I already knew who it was, before Anna even said it. Callista. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I powered up the old desktop in the den. Same one Dad used to keep the family tax returns on, back when he still did them himself. It was slow, took 3 restarts, and groaned every time I clicked anything. I opened the browser, logged into the shared cloud, cross-referenced synced contact history. There it was, a call placed 2 days ago to the exact number Anna had flagged. The log had been deleted, but the timestamp remained in the cache, and the profile was tied to Callista's old login. She hadn't even bothered to mask it properly. I sat back in the chair, hands clenched in my lap. Not out of shock, not even sadness. Just focus. Clear, sharp, unflinching focus. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen as Callista was spooning yogurt into Gideon's bowl. I didn't wait. "You're not just stealing space anymore. You're stealing my future." She looked up slowly, eyes calm, mouth full of feigned innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about." I took one step closer. "The clinic, Clear Ridge. You called them pretending to be someone else." Her expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened. Just a little. "You can't handle real competition. You never could," she said. Before I could speak, Vera walked in from the laundry room, holding a basket and her signature diplomatic smile. "Maura, let's talk about this without accusing—" "No," I said, turning to her. "You stayed silent when she edited me out of the photo, out of the house, out of your will. Now she's trying to destroy what's left of my career, and you still want me to play nice?" Vera's lips parted, but no words came. I left them standing there. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. Not again. Back in my room, I pulled out a duffel bag. It didn't take long to pack the essentials. ID, documents, 2 changes of clothes, a flash drive with every backup I had. I sent a secure email to a friend of mine, Beth, who was an attorney in Boulder. No explanation, just the subject line. Need advice, urgent, confidential. Before midnight, I heard voices downstairs. Low, intentional. I crept halfway down the hallway, socked feet silent on the carpet. From the kitchen, Vera's voice, barely a whisper. "It's time we discuss getting her out for good." This wasn't exile anymore. It was erasure, perfected, and I was ready to burn the script. For 2 days, I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice, didn't break my pattern. I moved through the house like steam, silent, unavoidable, pressing against every crack. They thought they'd won, that I'd curled into myself and faded out like the ending of a bad memory. I let them. What they didn't know was that I had been recording. Every hushed conversation behind thin walls, every kitchen whisper they assumed the fridge would cover, every word that dripped with intention like poison stirred into tea. Vera's voice just a breath above silence. "It's time we get her out for good." Callista's, cool and direct. "She's a liability. We need to isolate her." I cataloged it all, transcribed, clipped, uploaded. I built a vault of digital truth, tucked safely in cloud storage, backed up on a drive I kept in my purse, encrypted and labeled recipes. Then I made a call to Beth, my lawyer friend. I didn't have to explain much. The tone in my voice did the work. She asked for the files. I sent them all. That night, Vera called for a family meeting. Of course she did. It was a Saturday morning when I walked into the kitchen and found them already gathered, Vera at the head of the table like a CEO of dysfunction, Lyle beside her pretending to read a newspaper, and Callista twirling a spoon in her mug like it was a wand. I took the last empty chair. Vera started. "We thought it would be good to clear the air, start fresh, set boundaries." Lyle nodded like he meant it. Callista gave me a look I'd seen 100 times before. Polite, dismissive. "We all need space to grow," Vera continued. "And sometimes growth means hard decisions." I didn't wait for them to circle around to the part where I was the one holding everyone back. I pulled my phone from my sweater pocket, opened a file, tapped play. Vera's voice filled the kitchen, clear and sharp. "It's time we get her out for good." Her eyes widened. Lyle froze. I tapped again. Callista's recorded tone followed. "She's a liability. We need to isolate her before she wrecks everything." Silence. I let it stretch until even Gideon, watching from the hallway, sensed something had shifted. Then I reached into my folder and laid 3 papers on the table. "A cease and desist for defamation," I said. "Filed this morning." Another page. "A motion to contest the inheritance amendment. This trust was altered under false pretense." And the last. "My 30-day notice. I'm moving out, but I'm not leaving quietly." Vera opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "No more lectures. No more versions of the truth that work best for you. Callista's face was stone, but her jaw twitched. You don't get to erase me, I said, standing. You don't get to draw a new map and tell me I was never there. I paused, then added, I get to decide how this chapter ends. That night, as the house settled into its usual artificial calm, I sat in my car outside, engine off, doors locked. My hands didn't shake when I hit publish. The video testimony was already scheduled, midnight, across every platform I had access to. Voiceover, receipts, audio, dates, faces. I didn't ask for shares. I didn't tag names. Truth doesn't need an invitation. The house behind me didn't burn, but it would never be the same again. In less than a week, the video reached over 60,000 views. There were messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, college classmates, old neighbors, even a childhood piano teacher who wrote, I always knew there was more to you than they allowed space for. Strangers wrote paragraphs. Some said I gave them the courage to stand up to their own families. Others just said, thank you. Not every comment was kind. Some questioned my intentions, asked why I didn't leave sooner, why I stayed at all. I didn't answer them. I didn't need to. The silence from my family was more deafening than the flood of notifications. Vera didn't text. Lyle didn't call. And Callista, her accounts were wiped clean within 48 hours. No videos, no posts, no healing journey highlights, just digital smoke. I didn't follow up. The house still stood, of course. I imagined the curtains drawn, conversations clipped short when the doorbell rang. I pictured Vera pretending nothing had happened, Lyle nodding silently over his morning coffee. But reputation has a way of sticking to skin like humidity. Even in a quiet Colorado suburb, word gets around. And it doesn't take long for "we support each other" to start sounding like a punchline. Meanwhile, I moved into a small apartment near the university. It wasn't much, just a second-floor walk-up with creaky wood floors and a crooked light switch in the bathroom. But it was mine. The first night, I slept with the windows open and no one knocking, no one whispering behind the wall. I started therapy again. Real therapy, not just coping but excavating. I unpacked memories I didn't even know were buried, how easily I accepted being erased, how much energy I spent trying to prove I belonged in a place I was never allowed to fully occupy. Beth, my attorney friend, connected me to someone who knew someone at a mental health nonprofit. They were hiring. I submitted my application under my full name, Maura Harper. I didn't downplay anything. I didn't sanitize my story. I didn't lie to protect anyone. One morning, I checked the mail on my way out and saw a familiar looping script on the return label. Vera. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No envelope within the envelope. No pictures. We didn't know how to stop it once it started, the letter read. We thought we were doing what was best. Maybe we weren't. It wasn't an apology. Not really. It was a version of an excuse, dressed up as reflection. I folded it once, slid it into the drawer under the sink, and never read it again. That afternoon, while rearranging books from my childhood box, a piece of paper slipped loose from between the pages of a worn paperback. A drawing, crayon on construction paper, 2 stick figures holding hands, one big, one small. Above them, a sun with an exaggerated smile. My favorite person is Maura, it said in crooked, messy handwriting. I stared at it longer than I should have. For once, it wasn't pain I felt. It was something warmer, not forgiveness, but peace. Not for them, for me. Later that week, I recorded a new video. No music, no dramatics, just my voice, my face. To anyone who's ever been written out of their own family story, this one's for you. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. I spent years twisting myself into someone smaller just to fit into a version of family that was never made for me. But peace doesn't come from pleasing people who only love you on their terms. It comes from choosing yourself, even when it's lonely, even when no one claps. If this story reminded you of something you've lived through, or someone you've become, I'd love to hear it. Have you ever had to draw a line, even when it hurt? What did you learn from it? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story touched you, or let me know where in the world you're watching from. And if this video didn't resonate, tell me why. Every voice matters here. If you found strength, hope, or just a moment of reflection in this story, please consider subscribing to the channel. More real stories, more truth, more healing, together.